The first time my mother told me I was no longer part of the family, she was standing in the kitchen of the house I had spent 12 years paying for. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply slid a folder across the counter and said, "Your brother is taking over the house. You need to be out by Friday." I stared at the folder. Then I looked at my father. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. My brother Ryan was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee like this was some ordinary Sunday morning. I opened the folder. Inside was a property agreement. My parents had transferred ownership of the house to Ryan. The house wasn't just my childhood home. It was the home I'd secretly been paying the mortgage on for more than a decade. I looked at my mother. "Mom, what is this?" She sighed. "You've always been difficult, Claire." Ryan smiled. Then he said something that I would remember for the rest of my life. "You were never supposed to get the house." I almost laughed because there was something Ryan didn't know. Something my parents didn't know. And something Grandma had made absolutely certain I would discover if they ever tried to take everything from me. 3 days later, I found the envelope. And when I saw what was inside, I finally understood why my grandmother had spent the last year of her life telling me, "Don't fight them, Claire. Let them think they've won." I was 29 when I realized my parents had never really seen me as their daughter. Not the way they saw Ryan. Ryan was their golden child. Everything he touched became an achievement. Everything I accomplished became an obligation. When Ryan graduated college, my parents threw him a huge party at a country club. When I graduated, my mother called me while I was driving home and asked if I could stop at the grocery store. When Ryan bought his first car, Dad paid the down payment. When I bought my first car, Dad told me, "You're independent. Figure it out yourself." I did. I always did. And maybe that's what made them comfortable taking me for granted. I never demanded anything. I worked. I saved. I helped. And whenever my family needed something, I was the person they called. Ryan, meanwhile, became very good at needing things. By 32, he'd changed careers 3 times. He had failed at opening a restaurant, lost money on a real estate investment, and somehow managed to convince our parents that every failure was just another temporary setback. They never called him irresponsible. They called him ambitious. I called it something else. But I kept it to myself. Because Grandma had taught me something when I was young. Never argue with someone who is determined to misunderstand you. Grandma Evelyn was my father's mother. And unlike my parents, she noticed everything. She noticed when I was left out. She noticed when Ryan got praised for things I had actually helped him accomplish. She noticed when Mom asked me for money and then told everyone Ryan was the one supporting the family. But she never encouraged me to hate them. Instead, she'd say, "One day, Claire, they'll show you exactly who they are." I didn't understand what she meant. Not until the summer she died. That summer changed everything. Grandma owned a small but successful construction company outside Chicago. She had built it from almost nothing. For decades, Dad had assumed that company would eventually become his. And because Dad assumed it, Ryan assumed it too. Nobody ever asked Grandma what she wanted. Except me. A few weeks before she died, I visited her at her house. She was sitting near the window, wrapped in a gray sweater, even though it was warm outside. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. "Claire," she said. "Yes?" "Do you trust your parents?" The question caught me off guard. I smiled awkwardly. "Of course." She stared at me. "That's not what I asked." I didn't answer. She reached toward the drawer beside her chair and pulled out a small brass key. She placed it in my palm. "Don't use this unless they turn against you." I frowned. "What's it for?" "You'll know." "Grandma?" She closed my fingers around the key. "Promise me something." "What?" "If they ever tell you that you don't deserve anything." She paused. "Don't believe them." I thought she was talking about the family business. I was wrong. 3 months later, Grandma died. At the funeral, my father cried harder than I'd ever seen him cry. But I noticed something strange. While everyone else was talking about Grandma, Dad kept whispering to his attorney. And Ryan kept asking one question. "When are they reading the will?" That was Ryan. Even at his grandmother's funeral, he was thinking about what he would inherit. I didn't care. Or at least I told myself I didn't. I assumed Grandma would leave everything to Dad. Maybe some jewelry to me. Maybe a few sentimental things. I wasn't expecting anything. Then the lawyer announced that the will reading would be delayed. My father became furious. "Delayed until when?" The lawyer calmly said, "Until the estate documents are finalized." Dad didn't like that answer. Neither did Ryan. But I didn't think much about it. 2 weeks later, my father called me. "Claire, come home Sunday." "Why?" "We need to discuss the house." I thought maybe they were finally going to talk about refinancing. I was wrong. When I walked into that kitchen and saw Ryan sitting there, I knew immediately that something was off. Then Mom slid the folder toward me. "Your brother is taking over the house." I looked at the property papers again. The address was correct. The signatures looked legitimate. But something didn't make sense. Who authorized this? Dad finally looked at me. "We did." "You transferred the house?" "Yes." "Without telling me?" Mom crossed her arms. "It's our house." "No." My voice shook. "It isn't." Silence. Ryan leaned back. "Actually, it is." I looked at him. He smiled. "You've been paying the mortgage, Claire. That doesn't mean you own it." My stomach dropped. Because he was right about one thing. The mortgage wasn't in my name. My parents had bought the house years earlier. After Dad's business started struggling, I had quietly taken over the monthly payments. I paid them for 12 years. Every month. Every single month. I also paid property taxes, insurance, repairs, the new roof, the kitchen renovation, the basement flooding, everything. But legally, the house belonged to my parents. Or so I thought. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. Mom's answer was immediate. "Ryan needs a home." I stared at her. So do I. You can find an apartment. Ryan laughed. I turned toward him. What? He shrugged. Come on, Claire. Don't make this emotional. That sentence almost broke me. Because Ryan had spent his entire life making everything emotional whenever he wanted something. But when I was hurt, suddenly I was being dramatic. I picked up the folder. When do you expect me to leave? Friday. It was Sunday. 5 days. I looked at my father. You agree with this? He sighed. You need to accept that Ryan has more responsibilities now. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. More responsibilities? He's starting a family. Ryan wasn't married. He wasn't even dating anyone seriously. But apparently that didn't matter. He was the favorite. He always had been. I stood up. Fine. Mom looked surprised. Fine? I nodded. I'll be gone Friday. Ryan smiled. I walked toward the door. Then I stopped. One thing. Everyone looked at me. If you're so sure this house belongs to Ryan. I held up the folder. Why did you need my signature? Nobody answered. That was the first crack. And I noticed it. On Monday morning, I called a real estate attorney. I brought every mortgage payment record I had. Every bank statement. Every repair receipt. Every insurance payment. The attorney studied the documents. Then she looked at me. Claire, how long have you been paying for this property? 12 years. She slowly leaned back. That's significant. Can they really transfer it? Possibly. My heart sank. But... She paused. But what? I need to see the original title documents. I nodded. How do I get those? County records. So I went. And that's where I found the second crack. The house had not been transferred to Ryan. At least not legally. The document my parents had shown me was an agreement, not a completed transfer. Ryan didn't own the house. He had nothing. I could have confronted them immediately. Instead, I did something different. I stayed quiet. Because for the first time in my life, I realized something. They thought I was powerless. And that was going to be their biggest mistake. I spent the next 2 days quietly collecting everything. Then I remembered the brass key. Grandma's key. I had almost forgotten about it. That night, I drove to her old house. The estate was still being processed. Her house had been emptied except for a few pieces of furniture. I walked into her study. I remembered the key. There was an old wooden cabinet against the wall. I tried the key. It fit. My hand started shaking. Inside was a black metal box. No combination. Just another lock. The key opened it. Inside were documents. Bank statements. Property records. Letters. And one envelope with my name written on it. Claire. My heart was pounding. I opened it. The first line said, If you're reading this, they've finally shown you who they are. I sat down. I kept reading. Grandma knew. She knew my parents had been using me. She knew Dad was drowning in debt. She knew Ryan had been promised the family business. And she knew something even more important. The house wasn't originally my parents' money. Grandma had given them the down payment. But she had placed a condition on the money. The house was supposed to remain in the family for the benefit of the grandchildren. And there was a trust agreement. My parents had never told me. But Grandma had. There was another document. A copy of the original trust. And my name was on it. So was Ryan's. But there was a difference. The trust said the property could not be transferred without the written consent of both beneficiaries. Ryan had no idea. My parents had no idea. And suddenly, their entire plan collapsed. But Grandma wasn't finished. There was another envelope. This one was addressed to her attorney. I opened it. Inside was a letter. She had written, "If my son attempts to transfer the property to Ryan without Claire's consent, immediately release the attached evidence." Attached evidence? I looked deeper into the box. There was a flash drive. I almost laughed. Grandma had left me a backup plan. I took the drive to my attorney. We opened it together. There were recordings. Not one. Not two. 7. Conversations between my father and Ryan. They were discussing the house. And they were discussing me. The first recording was harmless. The second wasn't. The third made my blood run cold. Ryan said, "Once the house is in my name, she'll have no choice." Dad replied, "She doesn't know about the trust." Then Ryan laughed. "She never asks questions." My attorney paused the recording. "Claire?" I stared at the screen. She asked, "Did you know about this?" I shook my head. "No." She pressed play. Ryan continued, "Mom already talked to the bank. If Claire fights it, we'll say she's been living there rent-free." My jaw dropped. Rent-free? I had paid almost $180,000 toward that house. And they planned to tell everyone I had lived there for free. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Dad said, "What about the money she paid?" Ryan answered, "Call it family help." My attorney looked at me. "Do you understand what they're trying to do?" I nodded. "They're trying to erase my payments." Exactly. I sat there quietly. Then I smiled. My attorney looked confused. "Why are you smiling?" "Because they think they have 5 days." I looked at the flash drive. They don't know I have 5 days too. The next morning, I went back to the house. Mom was packing some of my things. Ryan was measuring the living room. I stood in the doorway. He looked at me. "What?" "I've changed my mind." Mom turned. "What does that mean?" "I'm not leaving Friday." Ryan laughed. "Claire?" "No." I looked at him. "You aren't getting this house." The smile disappeared from his face. Dad walked into the room. What happened? I handed him a copy of the trust agreement. He read it. His face changed. Then Ryan took it. He read it. And for the first time in my life, I watched my brother become afraid. Where did you get this? I smiled. Grandma. Ryan looked at Dad. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at me. Nobody spoke. Then Dad said, "That document is old. My attorney verified it. It's not enforceable." She verified that too. Ryan stepped forward. "You think Grandma wanted you to have the house?" "No." I looked directly at him. "I think Grandma wanted the truth to decide who got it." That night, my father called me. "Claire, let's talk." I agreed. We met at a restaurant. For the first time in years, Dad didn't sound angry. He sounded scared. "You don't understand what you're doing." I understand perfectly. Ryan could lose everything. I stared at him. Why is that my responsibility? He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. He looked away. That silence told me everything. Then he said, "Your mother and I made mistakes." I shook my head. "No, you made choices." He didn't respond. Then he pushed an envelope across the table. "Take this." Inside was a cashier's check. $25,000. "Walk away." I stared at it. Then I laughed. Dad frowned. "What's funny?" 12 years of mortgage payments, repairs, taxes, insurance. I pushed the envelope back. "And you're offering me $25,000? It's more than you have now." I looked at him. "You still don't understand." "What?" "I'm not fighting for the money." He stared at me. "I'm fighting because you spent my entire life teaching me that I wasn't worth anything." His face fell. I stood. "And now you're finally going to learn what that cost." The next morning, my attorney sent a formal notice. The property transfer was blocked. The trust was activated. And the estate attorney received the recordings. Within 24 hours, everything changed. Dad's lawyer called. Then Ryan's lawyer called. Then my mother called. Everyone wanted to negotiate. Nobody wanted to admit why. Because Grandma's will was finally being read that Friday. And my father knew what was coming. The reading took place in the conference room of Grandma's attorney. My parents sat together. Ryan sat beside them. I sat alone. The attorney placed a thick envelope on the table. Before I read the will, there's an amendment. Dad's face went pale. "What amendment?" The lawyer looked at me. "Mrs. Evelyn Bennett left instructions regarding a separate family trust." Ryan stared at me. Then the attorney continued. "The trust is activated only if an attempt is made to improperly transfer the family property." My mother whispered, "Oh my God!" Dad closed his eyes. The attorney opened another document. And because such an attempt was made, he looked directly at my father. "The controlling interest in the family company passes to Claire." Silence. Nobody moved. Ryan laughed. It was a nervous laugh. No. The lawyer looked at him. Excuse me? No, that's not possible. The lawyer handed him the document. Please read paragraph 12. Ryan read it. His face went white. Grandma had left him something too. A personal investment account, worth approximately $40,000. But the company? The property? The majority of the estate? They went to me. Not because Grandma loved me more. Because Grandma knew I was the only person who hadn't tried to take them. Dad stood up. This is ridiculous. The lawyer calmly replied, Mr. Bennett, your mother's instructions were explicit. Dad pointed toward me. She manipulated her. I finally spoke. No. I looked at him. She protected me. Ryan stood. You don't deserve that company. I looked at him. You know what? He froze. You're right. He looked surprised. I don't deserve it because I never asked for it. The room went silent. But Grandma didn't leave it to me because I asked. I looked at my parents. She left it to me because I was the only one who didn't believe everything had to belong to me. That was the moment Ryan broke. He started shouting. Dad tried to calm him. My mother began crying. And I sat there quietly. Because I realized something. For years, I had imagined revenge as making them suffer. But sitting there, I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted freedom. The following week, I took control of the company. The first thing I did was audit the books. That's when I discovered the final betrayal. Ryan had been using company money. Almost $160,000. Personal expenses. Luxury hotels. A failed investment. Credit card bills. And a sports car. I brought the evidence to my attorney. We confronted him. He denied everything. Then we showed him the records. He stopped talking. Dad begged me not to press charges. I looked at him. Why? He's your brother. I smiled sadly. That argument didn't matter when you were throwing me out of my own home. Dad lowered his head. I didn't press criminal charges. Instead, I made Ryan sign a repayment agreement. Every dollar. And he had to sell the car. He hated me for it. But I didn't care. Then came the house. The house where I'd grown up. The house they had tried to take. I had a choice. I could keep it. Or sell it. I chose neither. I turned it into something my grandmother would have been proud of. A home for young women aging out of foster care. My parents found out from a newspaper article. Mom called me. You gave the house away? No. I thought you would sell it. I didn't want money. Then why? I looked through the window at the house. Because Grandma gave me a chance. I paused, and I decided to give someone else one. Mom started crying. Claire. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I wanted to hear her say she was sorry. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, "Can Ryan come back to the company someday?" I almost laughed. No. He's changed. So have I. What does that mean? It means I don't confuse forgiveness with trust anymore. There was silence. Then Mom said, "You're really different." I looked at the house. No? I smiled. I just stopped being afraid of you. 6 months later, the company was profitable again. I sold one division, paid off several debts, and invested the remaining money into expanding the business. The house became a community home. And Ryan? He eventually got a job somewhere else. He wasn't happy about it. But he learned something. For the first time in his life, he had to build something without Dad handing it to him. As for my parents, we didn't speak for almost a year. Then one afternoon, I received a letter. It was from my father. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for the company. He didn't ask for the house. He simply wrote, "I finally understand why Mom chose you." I read the sentence twice. Then I continued. "You were never the difficult child. You were the child who refused to become like us." I sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. At the bottom of the letter, Dad had written one final sentence. I wish I'd understood that before I lost my daughter. I folded the letter. I didn't forgive him that day. But I didn't destroy the letter either. I kept it. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from someone admitting they were wrong. Sometimes closure comes from realizing you no longer need them to admit it. A year after Grandma's death, I went back to her study. The room was empty now. The furniture was gone. The shelves were bare. But I remembered exactly where she'd kept the black box. I stood there quietly. Then I noticed something underneath the old desk. A small envelope. My name was written on it. I opened it. There was only one sentence. If you are reading this, then you finally understand. Underneath it was another line. Never let people who underestimated you decide what you are worth. I smiled. And for the first time since Grandma died, I cried. Not because I was hurt, because I finally understood. She had known. She had known my parents would choose Ryan. She had known they would try to take the house. She had known they would call me difficult. And she had known that one day I would have to choose between becoming bitter or becoming free. I chose free. And that's the part nobody in my family expected. They thought taking everything from me would leave me with nothing. They were wrong. They took the illusion that they loved me equally. They took the years I spent trying to earn their approval. They took my childhood home. They took my trust. But in return, they gave me something I never had before. The courage to stop asking for permission to live my own life. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't watching the people who hurt you lose everything. It's building a life so peaceful that their absence finally feels like a gift. My name is Claire Bennett. For 30 years, I thought I was the forgotten daughter. Then my parents tried to give my life away to my brother. They thought they were taking my inheritance. They didn't realize Grandma had already left me something far more valuable. The truth. And once the truth came out, they couldn't take anything from me ever again.